How y'all feeling out there? I don't have a lot of time, so we're just gonna get started. Welcome to Cali, time to rally. Now it's VeeamON. Green V logo on a t-shirt and it's the theme song. This the keynote, the CISOs gotta keep their business running. So we got a one and only CEO Anand to tell them all what's coming. Veeam Data Platform is that software that you must install. Veeam Data Cloud is hosted, so we'll take care of it all. Veeam Data Vault, we got your backup stored right in the cloud. Fast recovery for when you need to pull them down. Cyber security, assurity, and peace of mind. 550K customer base, trust me, you'll be just fine. Ransomware is everywhere, so you gotta make sure that you're protected. Have no fear, cause Veeam is here. Make sure you do what we suggested. 3, 2, 1 with a copy job. Too fast, but this ass can't stop it, dog. Linux, hardened, object lock, immutable backups with a cherry on top. Salesforce, cast an extra ID, we can back it all up, whatever it might be. Data resilience maturity model, #1 in the community, we coming full throttle. Welcome to VeeamON, we about to go. Now please take your seat so we can start the show. Let me hear you scream one time for Veeam. Best data resilience platform that you've ever seen. Welcome to VeeamON, we about to go. Now please take your seat so we can start the show. Let me hear you scream one time for Veeam. Best data resilience platform that you've ever seen. Hey, 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 oh, oh. Yeah. Yo, how y'all feeling, San Diego? Welcome to VeeamON 2025, baby. Y'all keep it going, make some noise for our one and only Veeam CCO, John Jester.
All right. Good morning, San Diego. Hey, we got to give Brandon another hand. That show was off the chart. So just a little inside information. We had Brandon come and do that song at our sales kickoff in January, but I have to say, he realized this is the more important audience, our customers, our partners, and he dialed it up even better. So fantastic to see that. Well done, Brandon. But I'm John Jester, the CRO here at Veeam, and we have a great day lined up for you today. But I got to take a step back and reflect on yesterday. The keynotes, all the side meetings, getting to meet with many of you. I could feel the buzz. I could also feel the sun, which was beautiful. I'm from Seattle. It was rainy, but I hope you had that same sense of energy, excitement, learning about Veeam, but more importantly, connecting with each other, connecting with your peers, and building out that network that helps you successfully manage your businesses, manage your environment. So what I'd like to do is start off with a quick highlight video. Let's see what yesterday looked like across the event. So let's roll the video.
Good morning, San Diego. Are you ready for VeeamON? Everything Veeam has done since we started has always been all about you.
Version 13 software appliance. I'm excited about what we're going to do together.
All right, as good as yesterday was, we've got a fantastic day lined up today as well. So you're going to hear from some of our key partners, how they can help you building your businesses, and you're going to get to see all those products that we talked about yesterday. It's fun to see them on the PowerPoint slides. but it's even better when you actually get to see the products in action. So we're going to move into demos later on this morning. But to get started, I want us to really spend some time listening to AWS, Amazon Web Services, the diamond sponsor of the event, and they're so important to Veeam as a key partner, but more importantly, they're so important to all of you. We have multiple exabytes of data that all of you have trusted AWS with to run your business, protect your business. So absolutely critical partner of Veeam, critical partner of all of you. And to bring that to life and hear more about it, I'd like to welcome Paul Megan to the stage. Paul is Director of Product Management, responsible for S3, Glacier. Paul, come on out. Thanks, Paul.
See you, John. So that was amazing. I was actually part of the founding team that invented Object Lock, and I did not expect to see a shout out to Object Lock in a rap song. I did not have that on my bingo card. I can't wait to tell the team about it. My name is Paul Megan. I lead product management for S3 and Glacier. I just want to say a big thank you to Veeam for having me again at VeeamON this year. It's really an amazing conference. It's one of the best conferences in all of tech, and it's exciting to be here again. And a big thank you to all of you for giving me 15 minutes of your conference time today to talk about S3 and cloud storage. What I'm going to do today is kind of take you through how we think about protecting your data when you give it to us in the cloud. As John mentioned, we've got a bunch of Veeam backups in S3. We take that responsibility very seriously to make sure that when you need to reach for a backup, it's there for you and you get it back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive deep into the systems at work to deliver 11 nines of data durability to make sure that on those bad days, restores come back to you. And I'm going to talk you through a little bit how we think about data protection in the cloud as well. So just quick about me, this is actually the first time I've written this down on a piece of paper, how long I've been thinking about data protection and backup, and it made me want to go to the gym. I've been working on this for about 27 years now. A few years as a practitioner, I started swapping tapes in Amazon's first data center in Seattle, Washington. Did a little time as a systems administrator, or refer to that as the trench warfare period of my career. I switched over to the dark side and spent 10 years working as a vendor on backup software and protection storage, and then the last 7 years on S3. So this topic of protecting data is something that's near and dear to me, and I hope that comes through today in the talk. So in S3 today, it's a pretty big storage service. We have more than 400 trillion objects. We service more than a quadrillion requests every single year. And we execute more than 10 billion checksum operations every single second across the service. And we'll talk a little bit more about why we do that here in a moment. I put these numbers up because they're kind of cool, but also to illustrate that the scale of S3 teaches lessons that you really can't learn until you reach certain scale milestones. And there are problems that system operators have that they may choose not to address because those problems are so rare. They happen so infrequently, the cost is maybe not worth it. For us operating at this type of scale, these sorts of far-fetched edge cases happen thousands of times a day. And so we have to take a bit of a different approach in terms of how we think about protecting the data that you give us. And that's what I'm going to talk through today. I'm going to dive deep into the subsystems within S3 that deliver 11 nines of durability. And I'm going to talk about our approach to protecting data within S3, which is sort of an adversarial approach to data protection. It's very similar to security practitioners. When they implement new services, oftentimes we sit down and we model out all of the threats that the bad guys may come after us with. We do the same thing to deliver those 11 nines of durability when you give us a backup. We sit down and we model out in a durability review, written down on paper and reviewed over and over again, we model out all the threats that we can imagine against your data. Unlike security, which is typically the threat is driven by people, adversaries, we also model out threats that are against your data that are due to software defects or calamity in the physical world or mistakes. And we write all these down and we work backwards from these threat models to deliver the systems that I'm going to talk to you about here over the course of this talk. There are fundamentally 3 subsystems within S3 that exist to deliver 11 nines of data durability. These are end-to-end integrity checking along the request path, redundancy across storage, and periodic durability auditing for data at rest. And I'm going to dive deep into each one of these, as well as the threats that we're working backwards from in order to design and operate these systems within the storage. The first threat that I want to talk to you today about is the threat of data corruption in flight. We've learned over the years that often your data is most vulnerable when it's moving. When data is at rest, we can mitigate data loss risk with redundancy. When data is moving, we're worried about correctness. And this is because often when you move data, it bounces along and is touched by many systems along the data path. Some of these systems you may not even really know about or have any access to. For example, a network device on the internet. Each one of these systems has to do the right thing, and all of these things have to come together in order to correctly land your data in storage. If one hop along the way flips a bit, you could have a backup that lands in storage successfully, but is actually corrupted and not recoverable. And so the way that we model out this threat is we assume that all data from an upstream service is bad. We assume that all data is guilty until proven innocent. And we checksum the heck out of everything that we get and everything that we move through the system within S3. Here's how that works in practice. When you give us a backup, when Veeam runs a backup into S3, the first thing that we do is we fingerprint that backup. We take a checksum of that backup. As it flows through the system, the internal network within AWS, microservices within S3, we're checksumming that data along the way as it's passing through the system, making sure that every hop, the data is correct and stays correct as it traverses the system. Then when we go to persist that data to storage, we do that redundantly. And the first thing that we do after we land your backup on disk is we read it. And we checksum the data that we stored to disk. This allows us to know that, in fact, we stored what we think you gave us. Then we turn around and compare the checksums that we took of your data in storage to the original checksum that we took at the front door of the S3 API. And only then, if those checksums match, do we know that we have a fully bracketed end-to-end integrity data path, and then only then can we return a 200 success response back to Veeam. This allows us to know certainly that a backup that you gave us is the same backup that you'll get back when you want to pull for a restore. So that's the first thing, is we protect along the request path. And we think this is really important for everyone to keep in mind that data is at risk when it's in motion. The second threat that everyone in storage spends a lot of time thinking about is the threat of device failure. Devices fail all the time, and so it's pretty straightforward to distribute data out redundantly across multiple devices. If you have a single backup, it's spread across multiple drives in a redundant way. The odds of 2 drives failing underneath that one object are remote. Very rare, very small odds that would happen. However, because of those numbers that I showed you on that previous slide, we're going to beat the odds at scale, right? And so we model out the threat where we assume that multiple drives are going to fail underneath your backups at any given time. And we mitigate that by always distributing data in a way that it's redundant enough to tolerate the failure of multiple storage device failures at any given time without impacting the integrity of your data. When a drive does fail, we repair it from the redundancy that we keep on hand to ensure that we have that redundancy available. This is pretty straightforward stuff. Repairing from parity, this is something that we've been doing in storage for a long time. But where the engineering challenge is running it at scale across a storage fleet of millions of hard drives, and to do it fast. right? When drives fail, we have a massive repair fleet that is standing by to identify those drive failures and to repair them as quickly as possible. This calculation of mean time to failure and mean time to repair are key variables that go into our mathematical 11.9s calculation. Now, the next threat I want to talk about is bit rot. Bit rot is a bit of a phantom in storage. It's actually very, very rare. The hard drive manufacturers are really good at their jobs. And so bit rot is a very rare thing, but it's a threat. And so we protect against it. Because without protecting against this, you risk the chance that you're just going to diminish redundancy over time and not know it. And so to mitigate this threat of bit rot, of software defects, say, in the firmware of our storage devices, we do periodic durability sweeps across the entire S3 namespace. So those 400 trillion objects that I talked about, we sweep through all of that periodically to make sure that the data that we landed correctly, because we checksum the heck out of it, on redundant storage, which we're making sure stays redundant, stays correct over time, right? So now we have these 3 mitigations in place: checksum bracketing, redundancy, and auditing. But we're not protected against the threat of the loss of an entire data center with those systems. And so we take those systems and we spread them out across multiple availability zones. Availability zones are data centers or groups of data centers within an AWS region that are grouped together as a fault zone. There are at least 3 availability zones in every AWS region, and they're separated by miles connected with high-speed network. So similar to how we run all of those checksums and make sure that your data is good before we return that 200 success response back to Veeam, we do the same thing across multiple availability zones as well. We distribute your data across multiple physical buildings that are on separate power, separate floodplains, all of that. And we do that behind the scenes before we tell you that the backup was successfully persisted to storage. This architecture gets you a bonus benefit, right? Because if you lose an AZ, now AWS has never lost an AZ, and we hope we never do, but we plan for it and we design for it. And if we were to lose an AZ, this multi-AZ architecture also gets us an availability benefit in that we're able to service requests even with entire buildings down, just based on the 2 available data centers that are still online. So that is what we have under the hood happening to protect your data all the time without you having to know about it. We do end-to-end integrity checking from the front door of S3 down to storage to make sure that no bits are ever flipped as data traverses through the system. We store that data correctly and redundantly across multiple storage devices and across multiple physical buildings, all without you having to know about it. And we periodically sweep through to make sure that your data stays correct on redundant storage through time as well. So that is my pitch. And I just wanted to thank you all for giving me the time today. And I hope you all have a great show.
Hey, Paul, thank you for that. I loved hearing the commitment, the rigor to our customers' data. There is nothing more important to all of them. So thanks for being a partner. Thanks for supporting the event. And I just wanted to share with you our Veeam Kicks. These are the highly coveted sneakers that go to our best partners, customers. So here you go.
Thank you.
Wear them with pride. I've got mine on here.
Thank you. So I'm an Air Force One guy, so it's great.
All right, you're going to look good.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Paul. All right, so next transition is moving into the demos. Let's see all those products we talked about come to life. To make that happen, we're going to introduce Dave Russell, our Senior Vice President and Head of Strategy. Dave, come on out. Hey. All right, Dave.
Well, good morning. I had the pleasure of being the first keynote speaker at the first VeeamON, and now, a number of years later, I don't want to tell you how many years later, but we know that several of you have been to many VeeamONs, and if you know VeeamON, you know one of the things we take great pride in is our demos. But before we get to that, I want to frame a little bit about what we do, why we do it, and the context that I thought Anand set up perfectly yesterday was around the data resiliency maturity model. Now, a Veeam model that we worked with McKinsey, as well as George Westerman from MIT, to be able to take 500 additional insights from enterprise executives and frame a maturity model that can go from the very basic to the most autonomous, self-healing, best-in-class kind of capabilities. Those kind of capabilities come with the need for not just technology, people, process, but a real strategy. And at Veeam and through our partners, we deliver a strategy to make sure that resilience is in the fabric of what you deliver. Now, it's not just people technology, it's 100% the combination of all of those things. And what I want to do is, without further ado, warn you in advance that we're going to have 20 different new technologies presented to you in less than 38 minutes. And Anton, if you heard him yesterday, I see you right there, he said not just once, not just twice, but 3 times if the demos work. So we actually weren't planning on showing a couple of these technologies to you, but to try to make it even more fun and up the stakes, we added some things that we've actually never shown anybody in the company. We're not sure if they're even going to work. All of this is live. Some of this is code that's days old, hours old. The oldest thing I think we're going to demo has a build of 2 weeks ago. We're going over event network connectivity, showing technologies that are coming soon to you, and in some cases a preview that's so new that there are very few Veeamers that even are aware of it. So without further ado, let's bring out members of the Veeam strategy team. 20 demos. Give it up for the team.
Demonstrations, baby.
I know this is what you want. So as Dave said, we're going to preview some innovations related to some of the announcements yesterday, as well as a separate category, and Ben is super brave on this, for some future innovations. I've got one, and Ben has one as well. Now the trick here is what we're going to show you is going to journey through both Veeam Data Platform and Veeam Data Cloud. New stuff, stuff that we did not announce yesterday, and then just a couple of other several different things. Now the one thing I want to highlight, you're going to see stuff that isn't all the way perfect, and that's okay. We have some things that are in process, we have some things that are part of the beta, and then some that aren't, and I can confirm the beta does work. The V13 deeper dive that we're going to do later today, I do want to highlight, I'm going to walk through the Veeam software appliance that Anton spoke about yesterday. So we had a lot of things related to that we had set up, and I'm happy to report with Hannes that we have that in good shape. And then when we walk through this here in a moment, we're logging in. That's what we're doing, just for the record, because the security is real. We can't fake that, and she's almost there, I can tell it. But the thought here is that when we look at this, so it's going to go Veeam Data Platform, Veeam Data Platform, Veeam Intelligence, Veeam Data Cloud, Veeam Data Platform, back to some AI capabilities and more. And she just gave me the thumbs up. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Rick. So Big hand of applause. Yeah. It's always exciting to go first, especially when you get to showcase a lot of new features and functionality. Kind of some good news, bad news we got going on here. Bad news is, looks like I'm having trouble connecting to my primary server. Good news is we're running this all on version 13, so high availability is actually available. So it looks like here I have the opportunity to go ahead and connect to my secondary Veeam server, and essentially I could go ahead and fail over to that secondary cluster. Now, some of the underlying technology that you're going to be seeing here is actually being done by the PostgreSQL service. So we have replication that's happening behind the scenes, and this is actually especially useful for any organizations that have any issues with, if we start thinking about bandwidth or latency or anything of that nature, because essentially we have a built-in caching mechanism, so that way that replication can actually be cached. So that way we're going to ensure that we're not missing any critical data in order to process this. So we could go ahead and we can initiate this failover. But as we do that, I am going to go ahead and switch gears and just go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the other items that we're going to see in the Veeam software appliance available within version 13. Now, Anton mentioned earlier there was key 3 themes yesterday. We had security, availability, and access. First, we got to start with the security piece. So as you can see, the Veeam software appliance not only fully delivered off of Linux, but on top of that, we're going to have some desystig requirements right off the bat. So this is going to be secure by default, as well as making it very easy, very streamlined to be able to deploy this in multiple environments, especially if you're a relatively large infrastructure. Now, this does introduce a new piece where we start looking at taking an abstraction layer of how we handle the actual data set itself. So for example, I have this configured on a virtual machine. This is going to be where my administrator can come in and actually start setting up some very basic infrastructure items, talking about our networking, setting up our host name, et cetera. And once that's done, they can go ahead and they can log into the Veeam Host Management Console. So again, this is going to be somewhere where all of those administrators can actually come in and set up very specific settings or change anything within the configuration specifically around handling some pieces within the appliance itself. On top of that, we also have the opportunity here to add in some users and roles. So Anton mentioned earlier, we introduced this new security officer role, which I'm particularly excited about, specifically because they can help handle sensitive tasks. So let's say, for example, if I'm a brand new, this is a brand new Veeam software appliance, so we want to go ahead and set up maybe a secondary security officer role. I could go ahead and do that here. I can add in that new role as a security officer. MFA is going to be enabled by default. But guess what? Just because I hit finish doesn't mean that that role automatically gets created. Instead, this is going to default back to that original security officer to go through the process and actually approve that new role being created. So you have that additional 4 eyes authorization process that's going to happen to ensure that we don't have any misconfigurations or malicious intent that could possibly go wrong when we're configuring this part of our appliance. Now, also inside of here, we have our opportunity to actually turn on high availability like you saw earlier. So this is the step where we can configure this and then go into our Veeam environment itself and simply right click, and then we can go through the process of actually creating the cluster. Now, the one nice thing about high availability is that this feature itself is very useful, especially for any business, regardless on how large or how small your organization is. Essentially, you're just going to plug in our cluster endpoint, go ahead and assign our 2 nodes, and then we can configure those 2 inside of a cluster for high availability to take place. Now, I have some time limits here that I have to adhere to, so we're going to move on to some of the other new features and functionality that we discussed. So one of the other pieces was around access. Now, Veeam has had the opportunity to create these different types of roles. So we have the Veeam backup admin, security admin, operators, and restore roles. But we also added in the capability to create some custom roles. So when we come inside of our custom roles, I could go ahead and limit this specifically to a backup operator or even a restore operator, or we could look at both. Let's say, for example, we want to just look at the restore operator role. I can actually define inside of here what specific restore capabilities I want this operator to be able to perform. Now, one of my favorite pieces about Veeam is the fact that we have so many different ways that we can recover data from a backup. So being able to really limit this based off of who that application owner is or who that person is that's going to be performing these restores is really nice to be able to do here. And then on top of that, we could also enable some governance pieces around the infrastructure where we want to have this be restored to from the same source to selected targets. And if we actually like that custom role, I can clone it, and I can make some additional changes to that role here. And since we're on this tab, might as well show the identity provider, which has been added in. So being able to support SAML authentication, whether that's with Entra ID, with Okta, this is going to be a very easy way for enterprise organizations to bring in their own identity provider already available within Veeam. Now, I feel like we have to show the web UI, otherwise, I mean, Anton set it up perfectly yesterday, so why not? So here we are with the new web UI that we have available within version 13. So we have a high-level overview that you could see your resiliency score that usually comes from Veeam Threat Center. We can see a high-level overview of your infrastructure health, how is our current backup jobs running, those statistics, protected workloads, top repositories, a lot of really great information at your fingertips. But the only other piece in here that is definitely worth mentioning is how are we going to handle updates, specifically when it comes to security. So one of the nice things about the new Veeam software appliance and this being delivered on Linux is we have this new capability to deliver the updates based off of your different system settings or what your company actually would want to allow. So essentially in here, I could come in and I could actually select a maintenance window. Let's say, for example, we do patches on a weekly basis, and that happens on very specific days. We're gonna go ahead and clear all of these. Let's say that happens every Tuesday at a certain time. And I can actually select what type of patches we want to have be ran here. So this could include only security updates, which will be 100% mandatory, as well as I can include optional updates. Let's say we have a new release that includes new features, functionality. We could have that be enabled as well. You'll see a full list of what's included inside of these updates, but as well as a deadline for when these updates are going to push forward to continue to make sure that your Veeam software appliance is always going to be secure and up to date. Rick, what did you think? That was a lot we had to show.
Yes, you did. You did fantastic, everyone. Give it up for Emily. And it worked.
It worked.
Yeah. All right, the next, let's call it nearline innovation we're going to talk about is with Veeam Data Platform. And I don't always start a demo with a tweet, but when I do, it's my own. That's a joke. But I want to draw your attention to 2016, and I confirmed with Anton. When we launched Direct Restore to Azure, that was when we first went into platform conversion technology, and I like to use this word shared technology. Both of the demos I'm going to do is going to involve platform conversion. Source platform, different platform. We've dunked laptops in the water and all kinds of things. And you know, Mike Ressler even wrote a nice blog about it, and it showcased the appliance. But oh goodness, how far we've come, friends. So what we're looking at here, and let me zoom into some of the object storage under management by Veeam. I have some backups that are in Veeam Data Cloud Vault. This is one of those early builds of 13. It's not the beta from yesterday, so it's not as cleaned up. I already installed the beta. It's looking pretty good. What I can tell you is that these backups that are on Veeam Data Cloud Vault, I can put them in Azure with an instant recovery technique that Anton spoke about yesterday. So if I take a look here, let me do this and I'll show you what I'm talking about. When we take a backup under management by Veeam, instant recovery to Microsoft Azure is a new option, but we also have our ability to do those direct conversion techniques. Now, while they are good, they are not fast. This is fast. What I'm going to show you is very fast. So in the interest of time, Anton, he threw a challenge out of so many minutes of how long this conversion technique would go. In the interest of being in the magic of television, I already ran it before we started. Those of you with a keen eye may have seen the instant recovery running up at the top left. I'll be honest with you, this technology is fantastic. This is an awesome way, and I want to walk you through some of the different components. We have this construct of an appliance. In basketball terms, it's like an assist. It's helping us in the cloud get to the net of sorts. The thought here is that this appliance is preparing this virtual machine to run as an Azure VM. Those of you who have done direct restore are familiar with this technique. When we talk about instant recovery to Microsoft Azure, this is really awesome. Now, what I did also as an additional technique to ensure that this boots up is also ensure that the system is ready to accept logins, which is fantastic because it's one thing to just throw it up there, but then power it on and ensure that it's ready to log in. To have this happen in just a few moments, and this is an earlier build that has additional checks for QA and stuff. I've seen, different behavior with the warm-ups and stuff, but what we do know is that there's, you've all heard of the boot storm, the phenomena associated with turning something on. Things like databases, they have a whole bunch of really small reads that happen very quickly. When we have this in the same Azure region with the Veeam Data Cloud Vault with some of the benefits that are associated with the egress, this is an incredibly powerful technique. And I can tell you already, Niraj has got some ideas brewing, the Orchestrator product has some ideas brewing of how we can use this technology to bring some of these high-speed recovery techniques to new places. Now, just like any instant recovery technique, there's two really important things. One, migrating it to production, because it's reading from that Veeam Data Cloud Vault storage, but we got to close the loop. But I want to, and that's pretty consistent to what some of you know already, but I want to draw your attention to this technique here, open an Azure portal. Everybody on my team can confirm that I am a horrible person in the lab. Okay, I'm very messy. I don't clean up after myself, but one of the things I like is this right-click, go into the Azure portal, right into this particular instant recovery technique. So it's a really good segue for the next demo that we're going to do. Knowing what's going on with your environment, that completes the loop, getting it into Azure, migrating it to production. Friends, it just worked the first time I did it. So this is awesome. And I'm going to send it over to Kirsten to talk about some observability and Veeam intelligence capabilities.
Thanks, Rick. So now I'm going to showcase how we can use AI to find out critical information about our environment. So we're at VeeamON, we're here in San Diego, and I'm going to go ahead and open up Veeam Intelligence, and I'm going to ask it if there's any new capabilities or new tools that we can showcase today. So it knows that we're right here in San Diego, and it's here with us. Very exciting times. And it's telling me that there's two new specialized agents that I can use. The deep malware analysis, which is going to let me know about any anomalies that have been detected in my backup data, and also the deep data analyst. This is going to help me be more interactive with reports and Veeam Intelligence. So security is top of mind for my organization, so I really want to dig a little bit deeper into this and ask it if it can show me all the anomalies that have been detected in the last 30 days. Awesome. So you see that was pretty fast. It's telling me, all the different incidents that it has detected within my backup data. And then I can also see these incidents by workload. But I really need a more comprehensive analysis. So I'm going to ask it to show me this more in a comprehensive view, see some charts, some graphs, and things like that. And while it's doing this, you can see all the different tasks that it's performing to collect this information. And I also have the ability here to expand this window so I can get a better view of this data. Awesome. So you can see that we have some really great charts here. It's showing me the last 30 days anomalies by group type, by workload, and by day. And as you can see here, there's one workload that's experiencing more anomalies than others. So this is really grabbing my attention. I'm really concerned about this. And I can also see some of the raw data here as well, letting me know which workload, the type, the source, and the detection time. So I'm truly concerned about HKDCO1, which is the workload that is experiencing more anomalies than others, right? So I really want to see the potential impact that this is going to have in my data. So let's go ahead and ask it this question. So let's see what the blast radius is on this server. So let me scroll up here real quick. So I can see the total restore points, and I can also see the restore points here that have those anomalies detected. It's also giving me the most recent recommended restore point. So this restore point here is going to be the most stable, uninfected restore point that I can use when I need to recover. I also get that raw data here as well, letting me know the workload, the type, the source, and the detection time. So in certain situations, right, you're sitting here, you're at your laptop, you're like, what is going on, right? So I'm going to go ahead and change some rules to my Yara. Maybe I'm going to perform an ad hoc scan in a sandbox isolated environment to see if I can get some more information about what is happening. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it this question. I applied some new rules. Let's perform an ad hoc scan of this server. So as you can see here, it's going to be performing those tasks as well. It's going to retrieve that backup data. It's going to create that sandbox environment, and it's going to perform that sure backup session for me. Awesome. So this is basically just telling me here that it's performed that sure backup, and I can go ahead into the backup server and check on that as well. But, you know, I want to know more information about what it has found within that server. So I'm going to ask it if I can get some more information about those anomalies for this same server here. So now we've got that detailed malware information that has been detected on that workload. I can see that Veeam Threat Hunter has detected GanCrab ransomware. I can see how many files have been infected with those anomalies and the first time seen, along with a description of that ransomware type. So that's some pretty intelligent stuff that we have right at our fingertips within one VeeamON web UI, right? So that's pretty crazy stuff, right? So let's throw out a curveball here, and let's asking it, since I said we're in one user interface right now, so let's go ahead and ask it, what is one UI? And you know what? It's not really quite sure what that is. So I'm going to go ahead and see if anybody can help me. Ben, what is one UI?
Well, look, clearly it wasn't listening during the keynote yesterday because Niraj alluded to this several times. It's this unified interface that we're putting globally out to deliver all of our Veeam Data Cloud platform services. So you'll be able to log in, single sign-on, all the unified RBAC and security measures, as well as getting access to all those individual workloads at your fingertips within a unified interface, one UI.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Ben. Veeam Data Cloud brings you one easy-to-use interface to manage your data resiliency for Microsoft Entra ID and Salesforce. So as you can see here, I'm greeted in Veeam Data Cloud by the Entra ID dashboard. I can see my protection status, and I can see my objects protected. If you take a look here, you can see that I'm not only protecting users, but I'm actually protecting roles, applications, groups, and administrative units. I can also see any type of recent restore sessions. So you can see I've obviously been practicing this demo all week, right? So I got a text from a user this morning, and she was having some problems logging in. And so let's go ahead and check my backups and see if anything has changed within that data. So I'm going to go to backups, and I'm going to click on objects. And since I know the name of this user, I can quickly just type it in and click search, and it will pop right up for me. Now, when I select this user, I have the option to do a full restore, or I can do a compare and restore. So I'm going to go ahead and do the compare and restore, and for the sake of time, I have preloaded this within the user interface. So as you can see here, there's been quite a few changes that have been happening compared to my production data. So this is comparing my backup data to my production data here. And so this is why she's not having some issues logging in, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click the fields, click Next, write in a restore reason, and click Restore. So that's how easy it is to protect your Microsoft Entra ID and also perform a restore. But that's not all, right? From the same user interface, I can go ahead and check on my Salesforce organization. So just switching over here on the left, I can go ahead and manage this, and I'll be greeted with the Salesforce dashboard. This is going to showcase the overall health of my Salesforce data protection, showing me data, file, and metadata backup. And then I can also take a look at how much data is changing and all the objects that have been modified, right? So I'm going to go ahead over here and switch to policies. And this is just going to show me my backup policy. Now, by default, when you add in your Salesforce organization into Veeam Data Cloud, it's going to automatically take a backup for you. But you do also have that option here to go ahead and edit that backup policy so it's better fit to meet the organization's requirements. If I go ahead down to backups and to browse, I can browse by object type and see all the data that my Salesforce backup is protecting. So I can search by account name, and then I can come down here and see all my accounts that are being protected. Now, if I click on the latest here, this is actually going to compare that backup data to the production data and let me know if any types of changes have been made, right? So I can do this, the same type of restore here with Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce. So I can come in and take a look at this data and see if anything has changed. So some really cool stuff, and all within one user interface, simplifying your data protection operations beyond on-premises workloads. Now, what's great about this is that it's all available to you now, right? But we want to know a little bit more about what's coming in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Rick to talk about future innovations.
Thank you, Kirsten. That's fantastic. And again, those are new things, so good stuff. And those two are available now. Now, I have some numbers on the screen here. This is a future innovation. Myself and Ben in the next cut here, we're going to push the limits of some of these new capabilities. What do these numbers mean? I'm going to show you something that goes within the Veeam network, 4,461 miles from the Veeam Ohio Center, where I'm based, to our Prague R&D Center, over about a 15 to 20 megabit network with some high latency, and I'm going to push a 2-minute RPO on what Anton called yesterday as the universal CDP. This is amazing. So I want to draw your attention to a protection group. This is an organizational construct that has been in use for physical systems like the agent. It's also been implemented to manage and deploy enterprise app plugins, SAP, Oracle, etc. Now, what I want to show you is a new implementation here. When I open up this protection group, one of the things I can do is implement the deployment of the universal CDP agent. So this particular protection group, and if you've used a protection group so far, looks pretty normal, I'm going to go right down to the options. And it's hard to zoom and talk at the same time, so I'm going to leave it right there. So notice that in that protection group, I'm not putting out the Windows agent. Love it. It's been deployed 2 million times, and Veeam stopped counting after that. This CDP agent is inside of a Windows or a Linux system. It's deployed through the protection group, and it will run continuous data protection, or CDP, like we've known on other platforms. But there's always more. So this particular system in the protection group, this is a physical system that has been deployed, this service, and I am running a policy, which I'll switch over and show you now. I am running a policy. Let's see if I can catch this in the right moment here. Yep, right there. I'll just go to the part that matters. Continuous data protection, as Veeam has implemented it on other platforms, this has always had this construct of short-term retention and long-term retention. So I'm going to zoom in right here. This is that 2-minute recovery point objective. So those physical systems with this really inferior network are pushing 2-minute RPOs across the WAN of the Veeam network. And I'm also keeping a 4-hour short-term retention and then a longer-term retention as well. So this is a very interesting use case, pushing the limits of these technology. And if you don't really believe me that the network's crap, I do want to show you. I hope I'm allowed to say that on this show. But basically, this is my ping latency. That's not good. That's not good at all. And then I was using iPerf to look at the network, and it was actually even lower than some of those 15 to 20 type network throughputs, right? So it does burst up there at the end, but it was a hard push to get there. But you know what? The most important part of this is right here, 100% SLA. But there's more. There's more. In fact, the most important part I skipped over because I wanted to save it for the end. The destination. Where am I putting this? Well, I want to draw your attention to platform conversion, a technology that we've had for a long time. This universal continuous data protection is going from a physical Windows or Linux system to, in this first iteration, VMware Cloud Director targets, including Cloud Connect Transport, and DIY VMware vSphere infrastructures. It's super important that we want you to know that service provider technologies, those VCSPs, this technology will be implemented in its first iteration VCSP ready. We've had some requests for this, so Anton spoke to that, and I'm going to Cloud Connect right here. And I will just say that there are other platforms under development now, so we will add other targets to this. Keep in mind, we already have platform conversion, shared technology, very common theme. How cool is that? 100% SLA on a really janky network. It just works. So really cool and excited for that one. And our next future innovation, I'm going to pass it over to Ben.
All right, thank you, Rick. So if you recall, yesterday Niraj talked about a couple of topics. One was natural language search, or NLP search, and the other was MCP. So we're going to give this a go. End to end, we talked to about 26 different calls to different large language models, and we're leveraging 3 large language models in total. Yeah, it's all hosted out of Azure, which is, it's working fantastic. So the idea here is we create petabytes of data. There's lots of data locked up in our backup repositories. That could be, traditional backups or SaaS backups in Veeam Data Cloud. And there's a lot of data, a lot of metadata in here. And we spend a lot of time as backup admins, as service providers, looking for information. So we're trying to solve that and make it easier. So let's do a query here. And you'll notice there is some terminology that I'm using. So marine could mean ocean. And so what we've done is I've pulled some data out of Microsoft 365. And not only understanding the broader sense of the document, things like the document date here, when it was last modified, the document type, but you'll notice this rating. And this rating is really interesting because we're actually looking inside the document in this case. And when I search for things like marine, it's also able to match things like ocean or sea because they are related to each other. So it understands what we're looking for. But then equally, we don't want to miss out on keywords, things that the large language models or the embedding models might not know about. So we're able to also search for keywords in here. And what we do is we oversample. So when we do a search here, we're looking for, say this is limited to 10 results at the moment, the way that I've got this interface configured, but we're oversampling. We're grabbing more than we need, and then what we're doing is we're bringing these results back together, and we're overlaying them and asking another model, hey, what are the most relevant results to this user's query? So you can see it's done a really good job. It's returned a bunch of documents back. You can see the score here for this top document is particularly high related to the second, and that's because there's more relevant information in here. If I scroll this out, you'll see 33 matches, and this particular first chunk is actually from page 78, which is pretty neat, and it actually has a 58% relevancy to our query. Now, the other thing we typically do when we search, we might want to search for a keyword or a related meaning. That's really great. But the other thing that natural language can do is understand what we're looking for. And if you take a look at the traditional search flow where you might add additional queries, you might say where a document that was created after a certain date or an email was sent by a particular user, we can just type that in the query box. So I can type in, you'll notice down here, there's some documents from 2023, for example. There's no filter boxes. I can just now type from 2021 to return only the results. That query then gets actually run through several LLMs to understand what we're looking for. And you'll see now, below our search query, there's a document date, which is pretty fantastic. And it's worked out from 2021, means from January all the way through to the end of December. So it's applied that pre-filter before we actually have to go do the relatively cost and time-intensive search query over the actual back-end data itself. So that's pretty neat. All within natural language, we're able to search for these things. But we wanted to take it a step further. What if I now wanted to start talking with these results and understand it, prepare for a meeting, e-discovery? There's lots of use cases for this technology. So we've built a researcher function in. So with the same query, that same process will run. The query will run, the pre-filter will be checked. And then when the results come back here in a second, the researcher defaults into a prompt here of provide me a summary of the results. And if I scroll down, you can see that's now generated a pretty good report, pretty good summary of all of those chunks that we pulled back from that database. And because it's a large language model, we obviously can't trust exactly what it's giving us back. So I've got it in our prompting here to actually fire out exactly where it got its references from, what pages. But you can also fact check it. So I've added a little slider here, generated from 20 sources. And I can then scroll through these to then fact check what it's given me. And of course, you can modify the query. So I could put in something like, what is the generational capacity of the ocean? It'll then use those same search results. We don't need to go pre-fetch those. We've already got those here. And you'll notice that in this case, it's given us a really good result back. So that's great. All within Veeam Data Cloud, you've got this ability to have this very powerful search, but it's in Veeam Data Cloud. And so this is where I want to switch over to MCP. This is this ability to basically plug into these services that we're powering. We've got all the expertise and all the infrastructure behind this to build out this kind of infrastructure. But what if you wanted access externally to this through Veeam Data Cloud? This is where we flick over to the really risky part of the demo, by the way. So this is Claude Desktop, Anthropic. So MCP, Model Context Protocol, is effectively LLMs having a USB moment. It allows external systems to plug into large language models, but it abstracts all that logic away from the system. So in this case, Claude Desktop is a MCP client. It can consume MCP servers that are upstream on the internet or even locally on your computer. And so what I want to do is I want to run that query. So I'm going to run it. Hopefully it works. But I've got a backup video if we need to forward to it. So you'll see what it's doing here is it's worked out from this query that it needs to search my documents for marine power generation, which was that same query that we ran before. I'm getting it to limit it to 5, and I want it to create a 2-paragraph summary. So you can see it's done the search there, and now it's creating this document in real time on my hard drive. So you can see that's an example of a local MCP server having access to my file system. This is obviously a very basic example, but this could be pulling information from Veeam Data Cloud, doing a search, and then generating a report or preparing for a meeting. But it also could be other MCP servers that we deliver inside Veeam Data Cloud, and that, get me my alerts, what's happening in my environment. Great, there's something happening there. Raise a ticket through to my service desk, which may also have an upstream MCP server. So it did a bunch of things, right? We did the search. You can see exactly what it did. Here's all of the actual search responses that came back. It created a document called Technology Session. That's what I asked it to call it. And then it added some paragraphs. And if I switch back over to C Drive VeeamON, you can see 10 a.m. That was a minute ago. And if I load this up, I can change my theme. There's our report. So in a completely external system with a large language model of my choice running locally on this laptop, obviously the large language model wasn't, able to pull data from an external service hosted by Veeam Data Cloud with all of that processing behind it, able to interact with something like Microsoft Word at a basic level is pretty fantastic. So yeah, what do you think? What do you reckon, Dave?
Pretty easy, huh?
Yeah, well, it works, so that's good. It failed a few times while I was up on stage.
It works 100% of the time, 93% of the time.
Exactly.
So actually, I miscounted. I counted 21 different technologies that we showed, only 2 of which are generally available. And we played some greatest hits. There were about a half a dozen interesting things, from conversion technologies to our comparative production. But Ben, actually about literally half a decade ago, 5 years ago, Ben, long before Veeam, you were at a service provider. You leveraged our data integration API. You were doing cloud-based services to do pattern recognition on photographs. And now here we are, a half a decade later, you're literally mining the data repository in the backup. You're going through finding a needle in a haystack, subsetting that search to be able to get some very interesting results. But let's make it real world. When you were a service provider, imagine some of the use cases you could do with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've all been in as a partner. I've certainly been on the other end of it, where a user will email you, ring you, say, I need to restore some data from, last week. The file was definitely in that folder, and it was definitely called that. And you go in there, and it's not, and you end up spending a lot of time finding the data. So I can envisage, certainly from the MCP side, real advantages of you exposing this in some way through your customer, being it through custom portals, giving them access in other ways to allow them to find that information. And then you could even take it a step further. You could actually create the service ticket to say, I want these objects restored, please, or actually have them automatically people restored back. And I think, yeah, operationally and both customer facing, I think there's unlimited use cases that you could use this, not only as service provider, but also in enterprise customers.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ben. That was fantastic, and the whole team, amazing stuff. So what we wanted to wrap up is just highlight a number of key innovations. At Veeam, we're not only delivering enterprise class technologies to every segment of the market, we have an innovation pipeline that's amazingly strong, combining shared technologies for every single one of our products, some of which are generally available today, many of which are coming soon. Your investment with Veeam is a solid one. We're expanding even more capabilities in the future. And before we wrap up, we just want to do a brief bit of housekeeping. We've got some great sessions for the rest of today. Right now, the Technology Expo with our partners is open downstairs. Tonight, we're going to have some fun. At 6:15, we're going to walk over to the Nova nightclub. Starts at 6:30, goes for several hours. So thank you for coming to this year's VeeamON. Let's give a big shout out to the strategy team for all the demos. Anton, were you surprised that they worked? Because at Veeam, it just works. Thank you and have a great rest of the conference.